He also has an MA and a PhD in history from the University of Toronto in Canada. He's also served as an imam and teacher in various places such as LA, California, Kingston, Jamaica, and Toronto, Canada itself as well. And he's also travelled and researched in over 51 countries across the world. Presently, he's the director of Discover Islam Centre in Cape Town, South Africa. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr Abdullah Hakim.
All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds. And surely Allah is the friend and protector of the righteous. And I bear witness that Allah is one and has no partners, and that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, is his servant and his last messenger. And may Allah always and constantly send peace and blessings to Muhammad, to his family, to his companions, to all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. As to what follows, my beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, it is a great pleasure again to be here with you in this city. And I pray that Allah would make you successful and would unite our ranks and would help us to live up to the beautiful principles that have been established by the Creator of the heavens and the earth. Recently in Cape Town, South Africa, where I'm coming from, I went through a personal reflection. And being in the southern region, in Africa, we find ourselves in one of the periphery zones, al-Hudud. We are in the deep south. And being in the deep south on the periphery, many times there are things striking us that puts us in sort of a frontline position. And just recently, the rain started to pour in the Cape. And it poured on a level that people never really knew before. Lightning was coming out. The Cape is known as the Cape of Storms. But in this case, it reached the point where within 3 days, 38,000 people in Cape Town alone were displaced. 38,000 people within the city. And the floods reached this level, and the lightning striking. About 3 in the morning, I woke up, and the lights flashing outside, and the rain pouring down. And it's one of those situations where it really brings you closer to the reality of how delicate life really is. That we could leave this existence in the twinkling of an eye. And so at that point, I thought about the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, things that we are saying over and over again. And when those flashes come to you, it brings meaning to words that sometimes appear to be repeated over and over again. I thought about how we often said, quoting from the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Where Allah tells us, "O you who believe, have the consciousness of Allah. Fear Allah in the way He should be feared. And do not die except in a state of Islam." So that if that transition period comes, that we should try our utmost. We should ask Allah for tawfiq and do everything we possibly can, that in the last moment, in the transition, that we are in a state of Islam, Salam, Aslam, Yuslim, Islam. We are in this state of submission to the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And in this divine formula, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us what the success will be in the transition. And so the warning is given, the guidance is given that we should, in the transition, try to be as close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as possible, because when the person makes that transition, his qiyamah or her qiyamah has begun. The judgment has begun. And the questions will be asked. And a new phase in existence is on. This then is leading us to the major qiyamah. And that is another great event that all human beings will have to face. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us something else about that day. What will happen to us on that day? And we find in Surah Shu'ara in verse 89, it's telling us about that day. It says, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهُ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. That the day will come when your wealth and your children will be of no benefit to you, except somebody, or the person who comes to Allah with qalbun salim, with a sound heart. And so salim, there is salama again. It's another form of it. So one transition is a form of salama in a state of Islam, and the other transition is now salama. It's this qalbun salim, to be sound and complete and in submission to the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And this is important for us to understand when we look at the present condition of Muslims. And many times we focus on high political issues and Islamic economy and Islamic politics, and we need to go back to the source, to ourselves, because it begins right inside of the individual. And if we can give any message to our children, that message comes in this verse that is saying, do not die except in a state of Islam. The bottom line is Islam. And the struggle that is going on today in this world is not an ethnic struggle. It's not just a political struggle, but it is a struggle between haqq and batil, truth and falsehood, morality and immorality, Islam and falsehood. And so that submission to the Creator of the heavens and the earth is so important to us, and that soundness of the heart, that heart is an innocent one. It's a pure one. And part of this purity of the heart, it comes from a word haya, al-haya. And this can be translated as modesty, as shame, humility. The person who has haya is a very modest person. And the Prophet ﷺ used to talk about his followers, and he said there were three people, they were the best in Quraysh. They were the best in Quraysh. If they spoke to you, they would tell you the truth. And if you spoke to them, if you said something to them, they would not accuse you of lying. They would not suspect you. And they were kathir al-haya. They had a lot of modesty, humility. And he mentioned Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Uthman ibn Affan, and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, radiallahu anhu. And from this group, Abu Ubaidah, radiallahu anhu, he is in a separate position. He is in a special position with the haya. They describe him as being an extremely modest person. Almost we can say the word shy. When we say shy in English today, it's sort of like weakness. Shy today is like weak. They want you in the corporate field. They take you and they say, look in the eye. You must look him in the eye. You have to speak to all the people in the office. You can't be an introspective person. You have to come out of yourself. Right? They want to break down your haya. But Abu Ubaidah, haya for him, modesty for him, was not weakness. Although he was extremely humble with Muslims, when the enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal came, when evil approached the believers, they described him as the sharp side of the sword. he turned into a lion. So this is not weakness. Humility, modesty is not weakness. It is setting limitations. Haya gives purity. It gives health to the body. It gives health to the consciousness. And it gives a special type of character to the individual. The world we are living in today is the opposite. The programming coming to us on the television, the media, the symbols, the signs, the sights, the sounds we are hearing, it's all breaking down the modesty of the people. And the younger generation, what they are exposed to with this television, and studies are being done, that if a person is watching the television over a period of 10 years, they will have seen thousands of people being brutally killed. They will have probably seen rape. They will see things that normal people in their young age are not exposed to. But it comes at them and starts to form a type of consciousness. And so this global culture coming at us is breaking down that modesty. What is it doing? It's taking us out of a natural state that we are in and taking away that opportunity to leave the earth in a state of Islam and to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a pure, innocent heart. So it is serious. And it comes at us in many different ways. Recently in South Africa, they had a national poll. They went on to the radios and they did a poll and they asked the people of South Africa, they said, what do you think about legalized prostitution? We want to institute in this country legalized prostitution and also to allow drugs, legalize the drugs. What do you think about this? And they were shocked to find out that the response was from the people, and this is not just Muslims, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, traditional religion, all colors, 79% of the people in the country said no. We are against it. And it was a shock for the people. It was a shock for those programmers who thought they had taken all of the haya out of the people. Still there is something of the fitrah left in the hearts of the people. But they say, no, be a logical person. The World Cup is coming. We have to have legalized prostitution. They have it in Europe. So we have to have this thing. You're not civilized. But 79% of the people in the country said no. And that was a stance that the pollsters are trying to understand, the scholars are trying to understand, but they refuse to look at religion itself. They refuse to connect this with the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the revelation, through the example of the prophets that has shown people in their cultures what haya really is and what are the limits that people should have with their Creator. And so what happens in this society, and it's getting worse and worse, is that by breaking down this morality, by breaking down these limitations, other limitations are also brought down. To the point where the Prophet ﷺ even said, إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. If you don't have haya, if you don't have shame, then do what you want, or you're capable of doing anything. So if your haya is broken down, you're capable of anything. And so it continues to happen. But now the responses come. And there we were in Cape Town, 38,000 people displaced in 3 days, the rain pouring down, wind like people did not remember. They talk about India today and Bangladesh today. They're saying there is more water pouring down into Bangladesh and India. The flood is greater than anything in living memory. This is how they're talking about it now. It is the greatest flood in living memory. And that's serious in India, because people have been recording information for a long time. So it is serious. There's something really serious going on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Rum is telling us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. Corruption has appeared on the land and the sea because of what people's hands have earned. And we will make them taste something of what they have done in order that they will return to the path. Look at this verse. Corruption has appeared on the land and the sea. When the Sahaba looked at this, there were many interesting opinions that came out about fasad, al-fasad fil bahr, al-fasad fil bahr. What does this mean? And they looked at it as the wildlife being destroyed, vegetation being destroyed, even the fish in the ocean on the decrease. Why did this happen? بِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِي النَّاسِ بِذُنُوبِ بَنِي آدَمَ. Because of the sins of the children of Adam alayhi salam. So because of transgression, going over the limits, no more haya, فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. No more haya left. And so going over the limits, and because of this, then we see the result. And the Prophet ﷺ even said in one hadith, إِذَا ظَهَرَ الرِّبَى الزِّنَا وَالرِّبَى فِي قَرْيَةٍ فَقَدْ أَحَلُّوا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ عَذَابًا. If interest and usury, and fornication and adultery appear amongst the people, then they have brought on by themselves the punishment of Allah. They have brought it on. And so what is happening around us, it is a natural consequence. It's not something supernatural. It's a natural, it's sunnatullah. And it's naturally coming. And the issues in this particular hadith, the two issues, the one of the interest and usury, and the first speaker, you heard how serious this is. Alhamdulillah, we have some sort of way out of this as a nation. And so we should try to the best of our abilities to support any interest-free bank or institution. We should look upon this as one of the most important acts in our life. Because as people talk about politics, and as they talk very high things about Islamic State and about what they want in this world, if they are involved in interest and usury, they're wasting their time. But the shahid here, the witness here for us, is the zina. It's the fornication and adultery that is coming in. And through this fornication and adultery, and it is a really sinister type of system coming into people, and we see it happening over and over and over again. When I was growing up in the United States, and the television now, they would show, they had television programs. They had one called I Love Lucy. This may be before many of you. In I Love Lucy, a television program, because of the morality in the society, they would not allow Lucy and her husband to go to bed in the same room on television. They wouldn't allow it because of the laws. Now look what they're doing on television. XXX until you can't even count. On mainstream programming. And so what is happening? How dangerous this is, especially for fornication and adultery. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Isra, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشًا وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. He said, don't come near fornication and adultery. Because it is an abomination. It's a terrible immorality, and it will destroy everything in your life. It will destroy everything. Ruin your reputation. Ruin your family. Even your physical life now. And we on the front lines in Southern Africa, it has reached the point where in parts of South Africa, 36% of the population are HIV positive. That's the level it's reached now. But they don't want to deal with the real reality of abstention, of knowing who your partner is, tahara. what we know as tahara, purity in your relationships, purity in your body. They keep trying to cut this up when this is the essence of the solution. And so, the reality going on in front of us, it is, you could say, and many of the scholars are saying today, that the real struggle today, it is not aradi wa hudud. It's not just land and limits or national boundaries. But the real struggle is aqidah wa wujud. It is the essence of our belief, and our existence is being threatened. You could say that in this century, this is the struggle between morality and immorality. Because that is the basis behind much of what we see in the world today. And what did the Prophet ﷺ say about his own mission? He said, "Bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq." I have been sent in order to perfect the best in character. That's the essence of the messages. Akhlaq is the character. There it is again. Morality, haya, limitations. That's the essence of what is going on. And when we look at any major struggle, any aspect of our life, we have to go back to this in order to really understand what is going on around us. In this struggle, in this area of corruption in the world, an interesting report came out from the United Nations. And unfortunately, the United Nations has not done well for the Muslim world, especially with so-called peacekeepers who come into our country and protect everybody but Muslims. But when it comes to information, sometimes they are right on the mark. And they came with a startling report. And this is something that we need to consider now seriously. They said this generation is the largest generation in young people between childhood and adulthood. People between 15 and 24 years old. This is the largest generation that has ever existed, they have ever recorded. It's happening now. And they found that 48% of the world population is under 24 years old. Of this 48%, 86% are in the developing countries. This is shocking for us. In Africa, on the African continent, over 60% of the population are under 25. 60%. And if we were to take the Muslims and put all of the Muslims out on a field, male, female, young, old, you will see that the majority are actually young. It's the majority of this nation. But what is happening to these youth? And this report, which goes into many aspects, but I want to just share with you some of the points that they made as crisis points. They said there's 5 points of crisis. This is interesting because these are non-Muslims, but you can see how this relates to us. Number 1, they said violence. That people are growing up in an atmosphere of violence. And we know that it's not just physical. In many of our countries, and we know this because of the terror that is unleashed against us, people growing up with this violence all around them. But it's also psychological, it's visual, mental, through the television and the media. 2, the erosion of traditional values. This is an interesting point. That the traditional values, morality, is deteriorating. It's eroding right in front of the eyes of the societies. So the young people, what is their morality? What is left? Their heroes are bank robbers, hustlers, con men, low life. These are the role models of the younger generation today. So these are crisis points right across the board, not just Muslims, but it is really hitting us. And I have found in London now, being in London, in the Woolwich area, I don't know about Manchester, but in London now, the street gangs, the Muslim street gangs, are out of control. I don't know about Manchester because you're very nice, polite people in Manchester. It couldn't be here. But the young people are involved in drug taking, in gang banging, It's happening right now. Muslims. So the whole society is going through this change. Number 3 of the crisis points is poverty. It's poverty, especially in the developing countries. Number 4, disease. These are crisis points for the people coming into the world today. There are diseases moving around now amongst people that we never knew about before. And number 5, crisis points for the youth, drugs. The proliferation of drugs in our societies. And South Africa, we are facing it directly because it is the major trafficking point for drugs in the world right now. So, from these crisis points, they have a number of action areas. One of the action areas I wanted to focus on today, because it's another aspect of fasad, of the corruption in our look at Surah Al-Rum, and that action point is that humanity needs to do something about the environment. And this environment is actually tied in with the society. You cannot separate the environment itself, what's happening in the environment, with the political systems in our societies. You can't separate it with the division of wealth amongst people, because poverty is involved in this. Just like poverty and malnutrition is part of HIV/AIDS, the breaking down of the immune system. And so, statistics coming to us are showing us that 20% of the people in the developing world account for 86% of the consumption. 86% of the consumption of natural resources is in the developing countries. Only 20% of the world population. I mean, a few years ago they said the meat that they feed dogs in the UK could feed the whole third. The meat that they feed the dogs. And that separation, that injustice in wealth has an impact on everything. So what that means is that the 80% of the people, they only consume 14%. And they also found that the poorest 20% of the world's population only consumes 1.3% of the resources. This is injustice. This is crime. But also what comes out of fasad is the misuse of technology, pollution. And so pollution on the land and the sea. Pollution of the air, pollution of the seas, destruction of the environment, cutting down of the trees. Now, it's all over the place. And because of this, we see the results pouring down on us. In Canada, we have what they call acid rain. And in acid rain, because of the pollution in the atmosphere, when it rains out on some occasions, there's acid inside of the rain. So the rain, which is supposed to be a mercy for humanity and for the earth, is a punishment. It's actually poisonous. So this ayah is telling us corruption has appeared on the land and the sea because of what humanity's hands have earned, and we will make them taste something of what they have done in order that they return to it. We will make them taste it. And we are literally tasting it now. In the atmosphere, breathing in poisons, drinking water that's polluted, and we try to make it clean. Animals now carrying viruses, it's coming back again to the UK. And so it is all over the world now. And the mission of Muslims was never meant to be only to stay inside of the masjid. It was never only to be to keep Islam to ourselves, but to take it out to the world. Because within this Quran and within the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we have gems of wisdom, we have solutions to these problems. And so, we need to look on an individual a need to make that connection with the rope of Allah strong, to firm up our relation with Allah Azza wa Jal. So we are aware of the Creator, not just in the masjid, but outside of the masjid. How do we act? Do we act like nice, polite people in the masjid? And then outside something different? You remember 10 years ago what we used to talk about? About Bilal in the masjid, right? And you see him in the marketplace. Bilal is Billy. His character has changed. Ali is Al. Muhammad, who is he? Mo. Right? And he changes not just his business card, sometimes his character changes. He's like a hypocrite. And so our Islam needs to be fluid and consistent. Inside the masjid and outside. The same modesty we have, lowering the gaze in the masjid, it should be outside too. The same taqwa, if the adhan goes off in this masjid, everybody's ready for salat. But the adhan goes off and we're in the souk, and people say, well, I have 2 hours left. When I'll get home, I'll do Dhuhr, Asr, and Maghrib all together, and Allah will forgive me, inshallah. Right? That's what some of us say. But if we knew how close we are to meeting Allah, we would do that salat even if people are looking at us. So it needs to be consistent. Our relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal needs to be consistent, and the sunnah. Going into the sunnah. And the sunnah is not just 2 rakat sunnah. It's sunnah in our muamalat and how we deal with each other. That is a part of the sunnah that we are forgetting. We want the rituals, but what about the character? How do we deal with people? And not just Muslims, how do we deal with non-Muslims? This is part of the character of the Prophet ﷺ, which always came through, all the way through the Prophet. And so, the sunnah and unity, what we are talking about now, Muslims need to see what is similar between ourselves. Don't look at another Muslim for what's different. Look at what is similar, because there's a lot similar between us. And sometimes it's only a small difference between one individual and another, and they enlarge the small difference, and then look at the person as though he's not even a Muslim. We need to drop this and start looking at the people of the Qibla. And so, working unity. Let us unite in action programs, doing something for the environment. On an individual level, people are talking about, on an individual level, we can even begin in terms of our own self, reduce the waste, carbon dioxide, reduce our footprints, as they say, in this world. Do something. Reuse things. Reuse it. Okay? Also, we need to recycle, to learn how to recycle. We make a lot of waste. And you go to many programs, and you'll see Muslims who eat halal food, but many times we're killing our bodies and killing the environments. And they have the nikah, and they eat the food, and they look and they say, now the food is served, and the meat is floating in oil. It floats in it. And we put all the oil inside of our bodies, and then I'm thirsty, and what do I want? Coke Classic. I want Coca-Cola. And I drink my Coke. You know what that Coke is doing to your body? Analyze the chemicals sometimes. It's halal. I didn't say it's haram. But look what it's doing to you. And then check out, who Coca-Cola represents. And you'll see in Philistine that when you're drinking that Coke, you're bombing a child in Philistine. You cannot separate what is going on in the environment and in the politics of this world. And so, in all ways, we need to assume our role. And what the Quran is talking about is the Khalifa. And it's not just Khalifa in a political sense. People, when they think of the word Khalifa, they think of the political system, which is ultimately necessary. But we need to move first in the essence of Khalifa, which is representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth, which means that we have to tread lightly in the world and take our responsibility. The real da'wah, the real calling to Allah, coming out of ourselves, is providing Islamic solutions to real problems. That is what society needs. We spend too much time arguing over trivia. We argue over minor issues, furor. We argue over minor things. Is it going to separate me in tahiyyat? I move my finger and you don't? Is it another religion? No. The Prophet ﷺ said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray as you have seen me pray. So any way that's in the Sunnah, you're praying in the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So why make a division? And so to take that position, to assume that position as the Khalifa, to provide gems of wisdom, we are carrying solutions to the HIV/AIDS crisis, solutions to racism, solutions to political oppression, economic oppression, and solutions to the environmental crisis. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength to change our lives and come close to the Sunnah. May Allah Azza wa Jal strengthen our relationship with Him and make us strong believers. And may Allah Azza wa Jal protect the women and the children of the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah protect the men of the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah raise up a Khalifa in this world, a leader, who would take our misguided political leaders from darkness into light. And may Allah help us to be of those who will die with kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.